The content provided in this program is solely for information purposes. You should always seek advice of physicians, therapists, and other professionals for diagnosis or treatment. Hello everyone, I'm Karen Das and welcome to my program Special Needs. It's a 30-minute segment with general focus on special needs persons living in Trinidad and Tobago. Situated at Ragu Trace, Dabadi, with shady trees, swing sets and the sensory garden, is a special place, a sanctuary for those diagnosed with autism and their parents. This is the Autism Place, home of the Autistic Society of Trinidad and Tobago. On today's program, we look at autism spectrum disorders and the services that can help you better understand and cope with ASD. We'll also learn what it's like for one mom following her son's diagnosis.
The Autistic Society of Trinidad and Tobago was actually started in 1990, and it was started by parents of children with autism. At the time, there were no known services available for people with autism in Trinidad and Tobago, and so it was really the initiative of parents meeting with each other, coming together and forming an organization that was really geared towards parent support and helping themselves through the journey of parenting a child with autism. Obviously, that's grown a lot since, and now it's more of an organization that is able to extend the services to new parents, and so it's grown in that way, but by and large, it is at its core a parent support group.
My guests are Sarah Suhan, our therapist and public relations officer for the Autistic Society of Trinidad and Tobago, and its center manager Amoy Boodoo, who is a parent of a young man with autism. These ladies are part of a unique team of professionals, volunteers, and parents on a mission to improving the lives of those on the spectrum and their families. NGOs are basically non-profit groups comprising volunteers working towards achieving a specific cause. In this case, the Autistic Society, offering a range of services for parents of children with autism spectrum disorders, must rely on the support of special partners.
So we usually collaborate with many people within the field, sometimes through their own associations and organizations. Oftentimes in referring parents for autism assessment, we tend to refer to doctors who have specialized in developmental issues such as Dr. Bahadur Singh, Dr. Natalie Dick, and Dr. Ramcharan. We also collaborate a lot with speech and language pathologists as well as occupational therapists, sometimes on an individual level, sometimes on an associational level. Some of our other collaborators include Carrie Donburan. She's an autism education specialist. She's actually been volunteering her service with us for many, many years. We use her as a guide in terms of implementing new programs, new policies. And she will come and visit, and she'll also assess our programs. So she will observe the work that we're doing. She will make recommendations in terms of changes that we need to make, additional training that we requiring in order to become better at what we do. And we also have a visiting speech and language pathologist, Marilyn Moore, who does the same. They both advise us on a policy and program level. Over the years, we've also come under the umbrella of the Consortium of Disability Organizations, and they are sort of an umbrella group that many other organizations that are advocating for disability rights belong to. So I think part of their umbrella body helps us to collaborate more and to be able to be linked more in a more formal way, but on an individual way. In terms of our own organization, we do try to collaborate with other organizations, not just in the field of autism, but other related NGOs such as other associations or other therapy organizations, and that's how we try to form our own links and networks.
So, the obvious question, what is autism?
Autism is considered a spectrum disorder, and I think what it really links to is that autism is, because it's neurological and neurodevelopmental in nature, meaning that it really does affect people in a very individual way, and it means that how people present could be in a very individual way. So, for example, it's not necessarily a spectrum like hot and cold or high and low, but it's just recognizing that people with autism can have autism along a variety of presentations. So, for example, you can have people who are able to require less support and they're able to be much more independent. You can have people who require more support. You can have people who are verbal, people who are non-verbal. You can have people with various sensory sensitivities, whether it be to touch or to sound or to temperature, different things. So you can have people who show different types of behavior. And I think that's what the spectrum really is about. It's not necessarily about like on a 0 to 100, you're not like slightly autistic or more autistic. It's more about just recognizing that autism can look very individual to the individual person, and that people with autism are very unique in that it isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of presentation. People can be different, they can be very individual, and that's what the spectrum really speaks to.
A friend of mine, in conversation about disabilities, commented on the inadequacies within the local healthcare system. Are doctors, when making their diagnosis, keeping up with global trends in treatment and therapy? And what about hospitals and centres? Are they properly equipped to care for children with neurodisabilities? And financial support? Surely this must put a strain on families. Well, these are all relevant questions. So let's listen to one parent's experience, and we'll see why it's important for parents to be more proactive than reactive.
I actually didn't know anything about autism, clueless, but my son was 4 and he was not speaking. And on my way to work, I purchased a book. You know, these people that sell books on the side of the road in Charlotte Street and so on. And I paid $5 for a book that says How to Help Your Child to Talk. And at the back of the book, there was like one chapter and it spoke about autism. And everything that they spoke about there was like describing my son, Kendall. So my husband and I, we armed ourselves with the book and we went immediately to the pediatrician and we read it out for him. And I said, well, I'm thinking that this is describing Kendall. Is he autistic? And he said, no. You're overzealous, mom, because you're a first-time mom. Don't worry, just put him in a school, he will conform and so on. And I felt a little bit at ease because this is the doctor telling me that Kendall is not autistic. And I didn't worry about it again, but I still had a lot of concerns. And even my sister-in-law wasn't too happy that I was trying to find out like what is happening. And for me, I felt like I don't want to label my son, but I just want to label what the problem is. It's not that I want to find out like what's wrong with him, I just want to help him, and I didn't know how to do that. And then about a month after, she came and she gave me the handout from the Autistic Society workshop, and she was like, I think you need to go to this. So she went the first day on the Monday, and then from the Tuesday I went after that. And I remember sitting in that workshop just crying because, you know, I'm thinking like I'm listening to Carrie Dunn speaking about early intervention and how necessary it is and so on. And Kendall was already 4 going on 5, and then I'm thinking like all this time was wasted. And you know, as a parent, you have concerns and you're trying to access help and nobody's giving you the help that you need. And then I just ran with literally whatever they were saying. I started going to the library and using the internet there because we didn't have a computer at home, and just started reading up more and more about autism. Whatever was available at the Autistic Society, whatever meeting they were having, I started going. I started volunteering as well, like just answering the phone, because we used to have an office at Mount Up Hospital, and I started volunteering there. And what was happening, the kids who were being seen in the clinic, the doctors were saying, oh, just walk down the corridor and you can go to the Autistic Society. So just meeting those new families there was really helpful. Just having somewhere to go, and sometimes these parents just want somebody to talk and listen to, just listen. And I was able to share my experience, share what I learned at the Autistic Society, showed families what I was doing with Kendall, and it really helped them, it motivated them, it empowered them to help their child. And I feel that's really important because I was able to learn about autism, learn how autism was affecting my son. I was able to see through the eyes of my child, if I can say it like that. So then I could understand how he is viewing the world in order for me to help him. I always thought that I had to lead him out into our world of understanding. And over the years, I have changed my perspective, and I've learned that he is the way he is. I can't change everything about him. He have autism, and when he's doing something quirky or weird, I'm not running to stop him from doing it, just because who is it really bothering? Is it bothering me? Is it bothering him? And maybe he needs to do that to stay calm, right? And I've also learned that sometimes if you're trying to change a behavior, you have to replace it with something else or give a different input. But it's accepting him for who he is. And I feel that when he was younger, I was always quick to put on an autism t-shirt. I don't feel the need to do things like that at all anymore. Who cares? He's grown up now, and so I always felt I had to tell people he was autistic or he have autism. And I felt at the time too, it was a way of safeguarding, protecting him, so that people, if he did do something, that people would say, oh yeah, he's autistic, that's why he's doing it. But I have since changed a lot about how I felt about that, and he's doing great. He's doing really great now.
Amoy Boodoo's story as a mother faced with a diagnosis she had first suspected but dismissed by her son's pediatrician tells of the frustrating system that can sometimes keep families locked in doubt. As if having to cope with unusual behavior and a diagnosis is not enough, then comes the visit to the clinic.
Oh yeah, it's frustrating. And even when you go to the clinic, when you do get your appointment, you go to the clinic, the waiting process, even in the developmental clinics, or sometimes some of the parents refer to it as a special needs clinic, because all the kids with different special needs are in that clinic and on that day, and they wait for hours waiting to see the doctor. It's frustrating, it's tiring, just waiting, nothing to do. I mean, you can carry stuff for your child to play with, but if you're there for hours, by the time you're ready to see the doctor, it's like total meltdown. You can't even do a proper test. You can't even ask the parents the information that you want to get. So it could be very frustrating. So parents a lot of them avoid taking their children to the clinic. They find it's not very accommodating. We had one group who came to us and they wanted to do something in the Arima hospital, like to provide play. And they came and they got some ideas on what they can do. And after one day, they called back and said, I don't know how you guys do it, but we just found that it was so overwhelming. Just trying to keep these children occupied to play. It was really, really difficult. And it was just to help out the situation at the clinic in Arima. And I feel if maybe that's something that the hospital should think about, like having like a sensory room area, because it could be really noisy and a lot of movement and it's crowded and so on. So if there could be some sort of area located near the clinic where the kids can actually be looked after, or even where the parents can go in there with them to have that quiet space, so that even waiting might not be so difficult for them. Even getting volunteers to help them, utilizing university students in that room there as well. My experience when I traveled, I had the opportunity to take a note to New York, and that's one of the things they would do. They would have these university students just playing and interacting with the children. It's just to keep them occupied until it's their turn to go into clinic, to make it easier for the child. So there are different things that they can do and try that might be worthwhile to help in making it easier for the children, even in the clinic, and for the parents as well, because it's very frustrating to try to keep your child quiet and you have the nurses telling you, control this child, get them to stop doing all these things, and the waiting is just too long. It's hours of waiting.
While some parents can rely on support from other family members, there are many bereft of guidance and encouragement. But there are lots of ways support groups can help, something you have access to at Autism Place.
Over the years, we have met like hundreds of parents, and I think that's a challenge for a lot of families. we have met families who don't even want their spouse to know that they're here, or they don't want other relatives to know that they're here. They really want to keep it private because they still have to deal with the grief and the embarrassment, and which is all part of the process. But talking is important. You have to be able to express yourself, and there's a lot of emotions that people kept inside of them over the years, and I feel like when people know better, they do better. And just by sharing their experiences and just letting out their emotions, because they may not be able to share that with even their spouse on how they feel. I've had one parent say, she said, I think I've made a monster, and everybody in my family seemed to think I have a monster. And she sat there and she was just crying just crying and crying, and she felt so guilty for even thinking it, and even more guilty for saying it. You know, like, how do you talk to a parent who feels like that about their child? And so many times we meet parents who talk about suicide. They talk about, I can't leave my child behind, so I'm going to end this child's life and then end my own. And then you have to deal with things like that to it as a parent, and because of the lack of support. And I think family support is very, very important. I don't think I would have been able to do it without the support of my family. One of the things my sister said to me, my younger sister, and she's like about 5 or 6 years younger than I am, and she was in high school at the time, and she said, everyone is always saying that, if today or tomorrow something happened to you or Bobby, they will help take care of the children. And nobody never really had to take care of Kendall, and they never had to take care of him for any length of time, maybe just 1 hour or so. And usually when we're at any family event, I'm always the one to go and sort out whatever is happening with him, and they never had to do that. What will happen if you're not here? Will he regress because you fill his world, you is everything, and the fact that you're not here to help him, how is he going to respond to that? And she said, supposing I have a husband and he's not so understanding as why I am taking care of this big boy. Do you know what I mean? And I went home and I really thought about that, and I'm thinking, like, what is happening? And one of the schools that Kendall was going to was actually attached to an institution for men. And I actually went in there and I sat and I looked on and I said, you know what, my son is never going to end up in a place like this. And I just realized like how much I have to do to help him. And he was already 5. Kendall didn't start speaking until he was like 6 years old. And when his words started coming, it was just like single words, and it was just a lot of echoing. So that was challenging as well. And then just getting him into school was difficult. So he went to like 5 special schools before he started primary school at age 9, and in second year. And it's just, and my story is not unique. There are many families who would have experienced these challenges, especially when it comes to school and accessing school and education, accessing healthcare. It's not unique, it's just that he might be one of those that actually successful. He's very independent, he's traveling, he's going to university. So, but there are others that we may not know of that who is also doing the same things and doing great things, right? But there are many, many stories where the kid's just not getting an opportunity to do so.
You're listening to a special feature on autism spectrum disorder. My guests are Sarah Suhan, our therapist, who's also the public relations officer for the Autistic Society of Trinidad and Tobago, and center manager Amoy Boodoo, who's a parent of a young man with autism. Now, even after a month of autism awareness projects, I asked some random persons what they understood autism to be. The general thinking was autism was linked to learning challenges. But there are so many major misconceptions.
People, they connect intelligence a lot. So they think if someone is autistic or someone is non-verbal, particularly if they're non-verbal, that they can't do things, they can't learn. And so it's really interesting when you see how people interact when there's someone non-verbal in the room. It's almost like the person isn't there, and they would say things and you're like, but the child is right there, like why would you be talking about them like that? And it's just this assumption that they don't understand. I think that's one misconception.
I think a lot of what like people seem to think is obia or some spiritual. We get that a lot.
Yeah.
We had one family who thought it was because it was a Hindu family that married into a Muslim family. That's why the child was born with autism. Yeah. So there's a lot of cultural.
Yeah, I mean, I think some parents think it's their fault too.
Yeah, they blame themselves.
Particularly like parents who've just gotten a diagnosis, or they're now coming into that, and they think it. Particularly for mothers, you know, they're like, it's something I ate, it's something I did, it's something, some place that I might have gone to, it may be my genetic, my genes, and there's a lot of like self-blaming that happens in the earlier stages where parents just feel like it's something that I did wrong in my life, and it's a hard one to overcome. And so that's, I think, another misconception, is that it's your fault. And the thing about it is that society kind of plays into that too, because as Amoy said, people were like, you're not hitting your child hard enough, they spoiled, you're not training your child. So there's a lot of that happens within families too, where, a child can have particular types of behaviors and relatives are saying, well, you're not raising your child right. And so they equate the child's behavior with this child is parenting, or the child is misbehaving, when they don't realize that a lot of behavior is connected with sensory issues. It's connected with other things that might be happening internally within the child that is completely unrelated to the parent's style of parenting. So I think there's a lot of that type of misconception. In terms of disabilities, I mean, it's a tricky one, because we kind of fall within a space of disabilities, but I think people oftentimes, when they think of disabilities, they're like thinking of what people can't do.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of assumptions that, people with autism will never be able to work, that they will never be able to be educated. Why give them education? They have no use for it. So there are a lot of assumptions in terms of what someone can do. And that's why I think at this society, we focus a lot more on the strengths. What can people do? I mean, people with autism have incredible memories, some of them. Some of them are very compassionate people. They are individuals who are good at routines, who are great at repeating tasks. I mean, there's so much opportunity for that, even in terms of their career choices.
And their creativity.
I mean, as an art therapist working with people with autism, I mean, their creativity is amazing. For example, Amoy's son Kendall, I mean, he taught himself animation that, people much older in age would have now been learning in school. He taught himself in high school on his own. His creativity is incredible.
I just want to add, though, that Kendall is at UTT without having the prerequisite to enter university. They took him on the merit just because he can do animation.
Yeah. Which is incredible. I mean, I also work with kids who are incredible artists and who have better rhythm than any of us, who can play the drums. The other day we were working with a child, and her mom said that she just hears pan. She heard a lot. She's been listening to a lot of pan near to where they live. And I mean, she was playing the pan. And her mom was like, oh, I didn't even know she could play the pan. I mean, I think people kind of focus a lot on the what people can't do, and they don't really focus on what they can do, the possibilities, the amazing possibilities. And I think even on a more corporate level, in the States now, there are actually lots of organizations, particularly within the technology industry, that actually hire people with autism. They are looking for people with autism, and one of the reasons why is because their perspective is different. They can give a fresh eyes, a fresh take on things that neurotypical people just can't. And so some organizations in more progressive societies are actually seeing that as a strength. They are looking for people with autism in their to lend a fresh perspective in their industry. So I mean, there's so much possibility and in that human resource, and I think it's very underutilized in Trinidad when we have an idea that people with autism can't do things. We just kind of take all that away and we don't give people the opportunity.
So, what are the types of therapy available for parents and children? and how do they work?
We usually interact with all kinds of therapists here at the Society. We work a lot with occupational therapists. We work a lot with speech and language pathologists. We also have some of our families who participate in hippotherapy, equine therapy. They participate in creative arts therapies, which could be not just art, but like music, drama, dance. We have families who've benefited from play therapy interventions, from intensive interaction, as well as from not necessarily therapy, but other forms of intervention such as structured teaching, using visual supports, using technology and communication. I mean, there are lots of types of interventions that can be very useful for a person with autism. Art therapy and other forms of creative therapy is considered a psychological form of therapy, and so it just helps more along the lines of emotional regulation, emotional expression. Particularly at the Society, what we do is that we focus a lot on group work, because group work helps someone to learn the social skills that they can then use and extend into everyday life. So it's not just about being able to express yourself and your thoughts and your feelings through art or through creativity, but it's also giving people opportunities to kind of practice those social skills that become very important and useful as they move along life. So those are some of the things that as an art therapist I focus on, as well as sensory issues. For example, we have a lot of adults and children with autism who have a lot of sensory issues. They may have a lot of difficulty interacting with certain textures. They may be sensitive to certain things, and so part of the therapy is also kind of giving them a safe space to be able to explore that and to explore any anxiety they may have, or become more used to using different types of materials, as well as it can assist with things like, again, graphomotor skills or fine motor skills. So being able to hold a pen and use a pen is like a fine motor skill, but you have to have the muscular development for that. And so a lot of various therapies can assist with things like that.
Many thanks to Sarah Suhan, art therapist and PRO for the Autistic Society of Trinidad and Tobago, Amoy Boodoo, proud mother and center manager. Here's how you can find out more about autism and Autistic Society of Trinidad and Tobago.
At Autism Place, you can contact us via telephone at 646-5506 or 225-6808. You can also get us on WhatsApp at 684-4010. At Point Fortin, you can contact the Life Skills Center at 270-9224. That's our numbers. We can also be contacted via email, which is autismplace@gmail.com or autismtt@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Autistic Society of Trinidad and Tobago. We have a public page as well as a private group page for parents. And we also have a website, which is autismtt.org.
With just the right attitude, we have the ability to change the wrong perception towards those with disabilities. Robert M. Hensel. I hope the information shared today inspires an improved attitude towards those with special needs in Trinidad and Tobago, and we're able to be more empowered in the decisions we make. I am Karen Das. Thank you for listening. The content provided was solely for information purposes. Always seek advice from professional therapists and physicians before embarking on diagnosis or treatment.